Welcome back. So glad that you can join me today as I share some teaching tips on how to subtract unlike fractions using the traditional algorithm. This video is part 2 of a series of videos discussing fraction computation. So if you have not already done so, feel free to check out this video on how to add unlike fractions. Included in that video is additional background information regarding the standard, as well as some key vocabulary and concepts that students must be familiar with in order to be successful with this standard. Once students are ready to work with fractions abstractly, begin with modeling how to subtract unlike fractions using 4 simple steps. As a side note, it is best to start with practice problems that do not require regrouping, and then later introduce mixed numbers. Providing students with a checklist or anchor chart similar to this one is a great resource for them to refer to, especially for beginners. Now let's apply these 4 steps in solving for this problem. With step 1, we want to encourage students to write the problems vertically. Doing so is similar to what is done when adding whole numbers, and it is a good practice to encourage students to start using early on because it also provides adequate space for students to rename each fraction. Which leads us to step 2. Now, students must find the least common denominator. Remind them that when the denominators are not the same, they must find the common denominator by determining which multiples they have in common. So that might require a little work off to the side. Once the common denominator is determined, in this case 12, we will then use that to rename each fraction using 12 as the common denominator. For this next step, students should have an understanding of how to make an equivalent fraction by multiplying by a fraction equal to a whole. Since we know that 3 needs to be multiplied by 4 to get 12, we'll do the same to the numerator. 3 times 3 equals 9. And the same will be done for the bottom number, multiplying by a fraction equivalent to a whole. Now we're ready to move on to our final step, which is to subtract 9 twelfths minus 8 twelfths, leaving us with 1 twelfths. Let's try it again. This time we're going to subtract 2/3 minus 2/5. Rewriting the problems vertically. And again, since the denominators are not the same, we must find the least common denominator. As a time-saving tip, it may be beneficial to encourage students to start listing the multiples of the larger number first, and then utilizing what they know about their multiplication fact to determine the LCD. However, be aware that some students have a tendency to simply multiply the denominators and use that as the common denominator. However, remind them that that will not always yield the least common denominator. Moving on to the next step, remind students that when renaming the fractions, once again, multiplication is needed. Ask guiding questions such as, what is the missing factor that can be multiplied by 3 to get the product of 15? And most students will be able to determine that that is 5 and reiterate that that 5 has to also be multiplied by the numerator to get 10. And the same is done with the bottom fraction, renaming that fraction, multiplying it by a fraction of a whole. Once that's done, we move on to our final step, which is subtraction, 10/15 minus 6/15, leaving us with 4/15. So we know that 2/3 minus 2/5 equals 4/15. One more thing to keep in mind, unlike the problems in this video, some answers may need to be reduced or simplified and written in its lowest terms, as you can see in this example. To find out more, be on the lookout for upcoming videos explaining how this can be done. And as always, thank you for watching, and feel free to share with your colleagues. To continue to support my channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, take care.